All right. I guess we're live. So, welcome back, Tiger fans, to Rockin' Radio's football podcast, the live football podcast. I'm Nate Edwards. That's Brandon BK Kiley. This is Before the Box Score, live edition, uh, 2 days before the game edition. It's game week. It's game week. We got football, BK, on Thursday. How are you doing?
Kinda. Again, kinda got football on
Hater.
Thursday.
Hater.
It is only football in the sense that both teams will technically be taking the field and playing football. Quick, Nate, can you name 5 South Dakota football players?
I can. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right. First one up is going to be their quarterback. His name is Alan Bowman. He is actually a 5.63 star
Jeez, my God.
from Iowa State. Aiden Bowman. Then there's Travis Theus, who is a gigantic ginger running back. It's going to be very fun to watch him play. He's from Pratt, Kansas. You also have Javian Phelps, Jack Martins, Carter Bell, JJ Galbraith, and their center, Joey Lombard. But none of those guys are ranked except for Mr. Aiden Bowman. So here's the thing, BK. The NCAA counts this game towards bowl eligibility and all that stuff, record books. So I know. It's just an FCS game. I know. Missouri should win it. If they don't, then we should burn the whole thing down. But it's still football, baby. Missouri snapping the ball, throwing the ball, running the ball, stopping the other team from doing it. So we are good. We are excited. We are going to talk about things leading up to this game because this is basically an in-season show. We are going to do it live for you all. We're going to talk about everything that we usually talk about. And if you have some questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll take a look, and if they're worth it, we'll address and answer. So let's start off, BK. Let's start off with who's going to be not playing in this game because there are some injuries. We've talked about a few that were going on through fall camp. Jalen Carlisle was dealing with an injury. He is currently questionable. I would like to think that we could win without Jalen Carlisle, but, okay, so he's questionable. Then you get to the guys who are actually going to be injured and not going to be playing. And that group has at least one notable name, but we already knew that was going to happen. That's Chad Bailey. He is probably going to be our starting linebacker for the year, but he is having surgery, or he had surgery, and he's going to be missing the first 3 weeks at least. Then, of course, Michael Cox, the walk-on turned scholarship running back, Peanut Houston, the depth slot receiver, and then Bency Polgar, allegedly our backup center. So those are the guys who are going to miss. Jalen Carlisle could possibly miss. I know your answer, BK, but are we going to miss these guys?
I mean, technically, yes. Like, it would be better if they had these players. But no, they will not miss them against South Dakota. And if you were going to have to miss players, like specifically significant impact starters, the spots that you would probably want to, you never want to miss players. But for this team that you would want to are probably like defensive tackle, which not happening. But middle linebacker, maybe you could kind of make up for that with some of the depth that they've assembled over the last year or so. And then more importantly, safety. Safety is one of the deepest spots on this roster. When we were doing our preview over the last couple of weeks, Nate, I did my safeties preview and I was just like legitimately shocked at how many contributors they could have at that spot this year. I'm actually kind of excited that Carlisle is missing this game because I want to see what Marvin Burks can do in the second half. Like he might get real run. Philip Roche is somebody that has apparently had a really good camp as well. I want to see what he looks like out there. Sidney Williams, I don't know what he's going to be for Mizzou, but the dude is physical and he's super fast. And when you have those two things, that can work as a starting level safety at the Power 5 level. He did it at times for Florida State. So I want to see what he looks like in this uniform. And they've got Trevez Johnson, Dalen Carnell. All these guys have a bunch of positional versatility. They can play all over. That is the spot that I am the least worried about. Now, none of them I'm particularly worried about going up against South Dakota, but get them healthy, get them back by the time that you play K-State, and then we can really see what this defense looks like. I did want to add one thing with Chad Bailey. They called it a core muscle issue. For those that haven't paid attention, I don't know if this is the case for Chad Bailey, but just pure speculation by me, maybe reckless speculation. That is the new term that most teams are using for hernia is core muscle surgery.
Geez.
So I don't know if that's the case here. But in the past, like over the past like 5 years, really, They basically changed the terminology of going from calling it a hernia to a core muscle surgery. So I don't know if that's what he got, but it would make sense if he did.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Bailey's problem has always been staying on the field. His first 2 years he was injured. You saw a little bit of time in his third. This is his graduate year. There's nothing after this. So this is not something I'm sure that he wanted to do. He's not excited about missing 3 games, especially, what those 3 games are. But if he had to miss South Dakota and Middle Tennessee, like that's okay. That's okay. Hernia is interesting. But yeah, I mean, there you have Chuck Hicks, who has been with the team. This will be his 3rd year. He's a Wyoming transfer. You have Damian Wilson, who filled in for 165 snaps when Bailey missed some time last year. You also have Tristan Newsom, who was talked about a lot during spring and a little bit during fall, but kind of we don't know where he is now. So, I mean, there are options out there behind Bailey. And again, if you want to learn what you have, this is a perfect time to do that. Not to mention, Xavier Simmons, Will Norris, Carmicka Glass, Brayshawn Littleshot. I don't know if those guys are going to see the field, but you have pieces that you want to rotate in, and this is a good time to do it. So kind of along the lines with Carlisle, like it sucks that Chad's got to miss the game, but there's some depth, there's some youth. You can kind of see what you got. Like it's okay. We can manage without him, which is good. So those are going to be the injuries. We will wish them well. Hope they come back. Speedy recovery. But yeah, we are, like I said, we are in the season now. We had week 0 last week. BK, did you watch any of the games? I know brand new dad, your freedom is.
I actually did.
What'd you watch?
I watched more college football last weekend than I care to admit because it was all pretty bad. I mostly watched. I watched almost the entirety of the Notre Dame game, and let me tell you, that Sam Hartman guy turns out very good at college football, playing the quarterback position. I am fascinated to see what that experiment looks like the rest of the way. They played Navy, so don't read too much into it. However, they played Navy pretty tight last year, and this year they beat them 42-3, and that game was not as close as that score would indicate. And the score doesn't indicate that it was close. I watched a little bit of the highlights from USC. They have a freshman that looks like a jitterbug and is just so much fun to watch. But that's most of what I watched. I did not see much of the Vandy-Hawaii game. I saw the final results. That was one of my bets from last week for the BK's bets. Thought I could trust Vandy at this point. Learned that I cannot. Yeah. They got out to a strong lead and then by the end won by 7. So that was frustrating. Did you watch any of that game?
Until the rain delay, yeah. And then Vandy just, I guess, forgot to show back up afterwards. Let's also give credit to the opponent. Like Timmy Chain, that is the run and gun, which that's what he grew up playing. And Braden Shager, I think is the quarterback's name. Legitimately good quarterback. Now also Vanderbilt's secondary was asleep at the wheel, but I hope that Hawaii's that good. I also hope Vandy's that bad. That's going to make me feel a lot better playing them this year because I'm like you. I was like, okay, these guys have been incrementally improving. I'm kind of terrified. So if you can pick on them through the air, that's fine. But I also watched USC. Man, I'm so excited for USC.
Like, again, you excited about the defense? Because
look, no, I'm not excited about the defense. I don't know why Alex Grinch was brought back, but San Jose State's got a pretty decent offense, and it was the first game. And Bear Alexander, for all his complaining at Georgia of not seeing snaps, well, now you get double teamed every single play. So you got to figure out how to work around that. Yeah. I think they're going to be good enough, just like those Lincoln Riley Oklahoma teams. I think they're going to put up enough points where it's going to be okay. But man, if they don't get turnovers and this defense doesn't gel, like
the problem is their schedule is legitimately tough because the Pac-12 has like the best quarterbacks of any conference in America this year. It's weird because it's like this should be a year where the Pac-12 is actually on. It's almost like a showcase year for the conference, and yet the Pac-12 is dissolving, and so it won't matter to anybody. Mm-hmm. But you look at USC, you look at Washington, Oregon, Utah. Those are like legitimately 4 of the top 15 to 20 programs in the country this year. Mm-hmm. That's pretty damn good. And all 4 of those teams have real, legitimate, high-level Power 5 quarterbacks this season, which almost never happens. So I'll be curious to see what that looks like. And they've got Notre Dame on the schedule. And Notre Dame has a real capable college football quarterback who might end up making it to the NFL level. So when you look at what they've got to go up against, whether it's Washington, Oregon, Utah, North Dakota. I've got Dakotas on my mind. Notre
Notre
Dame.
Dame. There you go.
It ain't gonna be easy to finish the year 10-2, much less 11-1, which might be what it takes to get into the college football playoff with that defense.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, but I think there is a value to being a 6th-year quarterback in college, and I think that Sam Hartman is showing that.
Of course.
And so you think in your head like, okay, so who are the other 6th-year quarterbacks? And like Cam Rising, also out in the Pac-12, Bo Nix. Like there's no secret why these guys are so good. They've been in college forever. They played at this level for a very long time. I think there is a intrinsic value there that if you're looking to bet or if you're looking to find, dark horse contenders, look for the guys who've been here a long time. So I trust Caleb Williams and I trust Lincoln Riley's offense, but don't trust that defense yet. You got to show me something other than just turning you over 7 times. But yeah, it was fun to see football, fun to see it back on the field. And now we got Thursday coming up, and we are full born into the 2023 college football season for your University of Missouri Tigers. BK, I went out publicly. I stuck my head out from underneath my rock, and I shouted from a mountaintop that I am 100% bought into this team. And we have talked about it a little bit before. I have not put a win total on it. You notice that I haven't, but I am feeling good about this season. I will tell you why, but first I want to hear you. I know you feel good. I know you said 8 wins before, but where are you right now heading into the season?
Dude, it's so funny because like this team allows you to dream. That's what it allows you to do. And I don't think that we've really had that in previous seasons under Drinkwitz, where it's just like he was trying to build it, right? And it takes some time to do that. And when he's recruiting at the level that he has, you get to a place where, I mean, you've mentioned it before with the blue chip status that they're at right now. They've now reached kind of the requisite level of blue chip talent that is on the roster for you to feel comfortable with them competing in the SEC. And when you look around and you're like, okay, you do the count the ifs. What has to happen for this team to really compete at a meaningful level? There's really one. Like we can get into 12 to 20. Like there's a million different things for every college football team that has to go right for you to ultimately get to where like TCU was last year, right? Where everybody's shocked and somehow they make it to the end. But really there's one. Do they figure out the quarterback position, man? Because if you get that right, if Brady Cook takes a meaningful step forward, if Sam Horn is the guy that they recruited him to be, hell, if Jake Garcia ends up being that guy, I don't care what the name is, who it is. If they get that position correct, it changes everything. Everything. Because if Sam Horn ends up being, I don't know, what you were able to get in year 2 out of Drew Lock, if Brady Cook ends up being 70, now this is going to be a weird comparison and people don't typically do like cross-racial comparisons, but if he can be like 60 to 70% of what Brad Smith was at Mizzou, well, now you've got something, right? And it unlocks the rest of the roster because you have the defense to be competitive. You have an offensive line that is now at least average among your peers. And you've got a few wide receivers that you're like, all right, I could see how they could make some plays. But they haven't had a quarterback since Drew Lock, especially one that gives them a long-term answer at the position. And if they don't get it again this year, they're going to be doomed to that 7-5, 6-6 type of status. But if they figure that out, man, now you can dream a little bit. Now you can get to the 8+ wins.
Given the fact that Eli has finished 5-5, 6-7, and 6-7, would you consider a 7-6 record to be improvement / success?
These questions are always difficult because there's so much nuance that goes along with it. But if I just had to answer it just straight up, like, I'm assuming this mean, can we say 7 wins in the regular season? Can
7 in the regular season, exactly.
Let's say 7-5 and you lose in the bowl game again. So you get South Dakota, you get Middle Tennessee, you get Memphis, you get Vandy. Let's say you get Florida, Arkansas, and then one of Kentucky or South Carolina. I think that's neutral. I think that's what we've seen in the past. I don't think that that's a meaningful step forward. I think in order to take a meaningful step forward, you have to beat a good team. Like, it's time for Mizzou to do that. Go out there and, like, in 2020, they beat what we thought was a good team that ended up being a bad team. They beat LSU, and that was a fraudulent LSU team. They were living off of the name of the team that won the Natty the year before.
Second worst LSU team since 2000.
It was terrible. But at the time, it felt big.
It
right?
did.
Because you're going out there and you're like, damn, all right, this is what it's supposed to feel like when you're a Mizzou fan. But then really since then, I mean, you haven't really had that win that you can really hang your hat on. So this year, if you're able to do that, if you get over the hump like last year where you almost found a way to pull it out at Auburn. And that wasn't a great Auburn team, but at least it's a road game. You almost found a way to do the impossible against Georgia. If you can actually do that this year, all right, now we're talking. So get a win against K-State, LSU, Georgia, or Tennessee. You beat one of those 4 teams and they live up to expectations. Now we're talking about it.
Signature win.
Yep.
That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. If you get 7 wins and one of them is a signature win, I could see that as meaningful progress.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's 7 wins and none of them are like anything different than what we've seen previously, that feels more of status quo to me. How do you feel about it?
Fair enough. 7 wins, 7-5 in the regular season, I feel like is going to feel like a disappointment. Again, you got to know how you got those 7. And we are assuming he will get the 7 like easiest path possible, right? But I feel like it would not do anything for the fan base. You'll have a pocket that says, see, he's arrived. You'll have the pocket that says he still stinks, and you're never going to change those 2 groups. But like, I think your average Missouri fan is going to go, all right, I expected more. And maybe I'm speaking because I expect more. But I think for me, success for Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri in year 4, you have to get to 8. Now, you can use the bowl game if you have to. But for me, you got to get to 8, man. You got to get to 8. And like you said, you went over the schedule. Let me give you my version. South Dakota, Middle Tennessee. Yes, you have to win those. Win the neutral against Memphis. Yes. Beat Vandy on the road, which tricky, but okay. Beat Vandy on the road. K-State in this opening salvo is going to be the litmus test. If you can either hang or beat them, then you might have something there. But if you lose at home to Kansas State, it is inevitably going to take the wind out of the sails, which is what always happens in the beginning of the year. And we can't have that happen. So
that K-State game in so many ways defines the season, dude. It's crazy how much importance there is on that game. But if you win it, it opens up every possibility.
Yes.
And if you lose it, you're absolutely correct. It takes the wind completely out of the sails, in part because you don't get back home until the LSU game, because you're going to St. Louis for that Memphis game, and then you go on the road at Vandy. And regardless of the results in that, if you're going into that LSU game 4-1, and maybe it's like ugly wins against Memphis or Vanderbilt, which seem possible, people aren't going to be super excited about the team at that point. Right or wrong, that'll just kind of be the way that it's going in. But if you're 5-0, and I don't care how you won against K-State, I don't care if it was a blocked extra point and you won 7-6 because of it.
Yeah.
There will be all of the enthusiasm you could possibly ask for. That is the most important game that Mizzou has played in a long time.
Yeah. That is going to be the first, most important game. The second most important game to me, Kentucky on the road. The first, Kansas State, is a test of who are you in college football. The second is who are you in the SEC. And, I'm not saying that this is the goal. Well, it's always the goal. But, like, if you want to make a run at winning the East in the last year of its existence, you have to beat Kentucky. You have to. Because I always say, if your team, like, if you can't beat Kentucky, you're not very good. If you can beat Kentucky, then you're pretty good. And Kentucky, unfortunately, is actually going to be a pretty decent team, we think, this year. So if this Missouri team, Eli Drinkwitz, Missouri, the team that has lost to Kentucky like 8 out of the last 9 years, goes on the road and wins in, what is it called? Kroger Field, wins at the Krog for the first time since 2013, then yes. Even if you lost to K-State, I'm like, I'm right back, baby. I'm right back. But if you lose K-State and you lose Kentucky, then this is another 6-win season. If you beat K-State and lose to Kentucky, not great. You're probably not going to win the East, but like you can't have both of those fall apart. And I feel like those are the two biggest games, and it sucks that one's on the road, but that's life in the SEC, man.
I mean, that team has just been such a house of horrors for Missouri.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And so if they're able to finally take that down, like other than COVID, Missouri has lost every time since 2015 against Kentucky.
Yep.
But then you had the COVID year, find a way to win that one. Otherwise, it's just been, and it's been the most brutal ways to lose. It's not just that you lose, it's that you can remember specifically the way that you lose. Like Mizzou is to Kentucky what South Carolina is to Mizzou.
Exactly.
In so many different ways. There's like a Kentucky here, Mizzou here, South Carolina here. And none of those three teams can believe that the other two could possibly be better than them.
Yeah.
And so it is kind of like just this weird triangle of hatred between the three teams that honestly nobody really respects in the SEC football wise, right, wrong, or indifferent. And they all believe that they should be better than the other in any given season. So if Missouri's able to come out of that trifecta with supremacy this year, you feel good about it. But that's what kind of defines where you're at in the East, right?
It does. It does. So I'll say South Dakota, Middle Tennessee. I'm going to say Missouri wins K-State because I'm crazy.
Love it.
They then beat Memphis and St. Louis. They then beat Vanderbilt on the road. Then you go up to LSU, which could quite possibly be, like we've talked about before, game day, or at least SEC game day. LSU returns a lot. They're really good. You could give them hell for 3 quarters. I don't know what happens.
It feels Georgia last year-ish.
Yeah.
Like it'll be a great environment. You might be able to keep it competitive, but ultimately you give the respect that they deserve to LSU and you say they win it.
So I'm going to say that's a loss. That's still 5-1 heading to Kentucky. And again, that's your statement game. Can you win against a peer program, even if they are way better than you at this point? I'm going to go ahead and say that this is one of those losses again, where it's just like you lose LSU and you go on the road and you fall into the horror movie and you get sliced up. So now you're sitting at 5-2. Okay. That's not great. South Carolina comes to town. South Carolina, man, Spencer Rattler, new OC, lots of missing production. Like I think Missouri continues the streak there. So you're sitting at 6-2. Georgia comes, you go to Georgia. They're not going to three-peat, but I don't think that precludes them from beating Missouri. So we'll call that 6-3. All right. Then you get Tennessee, Florida, Arkansas. Maybe you're close with Tennessee or better than last year. I think that's a 4th loss, but then Florida and Arkansas, I think you win. And for me, that's 8-4. Now you're going into the bowl game. It's like 2006 Missouri. You had a hot start. You kind of had some punches towards the end, and then you get a bowl game to make it right. So that is how I see it. That is how I hope it happens. And I am sorry for saying it out loud and making it not happen.
What makes you confident in this squad specifically? Because we've been doing this podcast for 4 years now?
Yeah.
And in the time that we have been doing it, you are typically more pessimistic than me. And that I think honestly more realistic, because your expectations for the seasons have mostly come to fruition. Like it's kind of gone according to what you have believed it to be based on the numbers, based on the spreadsheet nerds. They've kind of been right about Mizzou more often than not, but you're not alone in this. I saw something the other day at MGM, 99% of the bets are on the Mizzou over. 99%. Do you know how rare that is, dude? For anything, for anybody to get 99% agreement on anything in this world, much less a sports bet, is impossible. So for it to be Lil Mizzou that's getting 99% on the over 6.5, I think it speaks to where people are at on this team. But what makes you specifically confident in them?
So there's 2 buckets that are making me confident. It's who Missouri is and who they're playing. And let me talk about those that they're playing first. Okay. And let's view it just from an East standpoint, because LSU, okay. Arkansas, okay, whatever. Think about the East opponents. Let's start at the top. Georgia has a brand new OC who isn't nearly as creative or prolific as the previous one. That probably doesn't matter given the type of talent that they have. They are also getting a hard reset in their receiving core. I know they brought in Dom Lovett. I know they brought in the receiver from Ole Miss. It's brand new guys with a brand new OC and a brand new quarterback. On top of that, they had the 76th best returning production. If you are that far, you regress. Now, I know regressing from a 30 SP plus to a 27 still means you are 27 points better than the average college football player and still going to win a ton of games. I understand that, but the gap comes down a little bit, just a little bit. Does that mean Missouri beats them? I don't know. Probably means they trip up somewhere. That's fine. Tennessee, brand new OC, brand new quarterback. They only have 57% of the returning offense, and they're only 47th overall. Kentucky, new OC, new quarterback, probably upgrades. I understand that. But remember, defense is Kentucky's calling card, and they only have 58% of their returning defense. They're 50th overall. South Carolina, new OC, who sucked as an NFL coordinator and had never been in college before. They have Spencer Rattler, who gives just as much as he takes. And you have the 93rd best returning defense in that for South Carolina and 74th overall. Florida fired half the offensive staff. They have a brand new 29-year-old DC who could not make it anywhere else. A new quarterback who stinks. They're basically going to be Wisconsin South, which Missouri's done pretty well with the power running game. And they have the worst returning production of almost anybody. 104th in offense, 116th on defense, 115th overall. And of course, Vanderbilt just got in a boat race with Hawaii and almost lost. K-State is rebuilding. Memphis is got a really good quarterback, and that's it. South Dakota. Middle Tennessee is scary just because they beat Miami last year, but they are all boom, or nothing. When it comes to Missouri, they have a ton of returning production. They have depth at the problems that you have. Quarterback, defensive end, those are questions answered. There are options. Offensive line, everyone says it's better. They brought in new guys. The defense returns almost everybody. I know defense can regress, but I'm just saying there is so much coming back from Mizzou. I know they have questions, but their opponents have a lot of questions too. And for the first time, Georgia's getting reset at the unit that took them over the edge and let them win 2 national championships. It feels like conditions are perfect, and I might just be high, but I'm telling you, man, I see who they play and I see what they bring back. And even though progress isn't linear, if they can keep that progress or just not regress, 7-8 wins is on the table. And I know I'm crazy, but that's where I'm at.
I don't think you're crazy. And it makes me afraid of myself that I am willing to believe in this team. Because, like, how many times have we believed in anything Mizzou related and it typically ends poorly?
I'm with you.
But one of the reasons that I am allowing myself to believe a little bit is because of Mizzou basketball last year. Like, I know one thing has nothing to do with the other, right? They are completely separate entities, and the only thing that makes them similar is the fact that they happen to wear the same cloth whenever they play their respective sports. Like, their colors are the same. But there was no reason really to believe in Mizzou basketball last year. And then things just kind of started going their way. And you're like, all right, like maybe there's something here. And then you see the Kobe Brown development. You're like, okay, well, if they have a star and Kobe appears to be that, maybe there's something more here than what I'm even giving them credit for right now. Because at first it was like, hey, maybe they can be competitive. And then it was like, hey, maybe they can make the NIT. And then finally, okay, they possibly could get to the tournament. And then it became, how far can they get when they get to the tournament? And so I do think there's some of that could exist with this Mizzou football team where early on in the year, if they look good in their first 2 weeks, you say to yourself, all right, maybe there's a little more here. Maybe they could be 7-5, 8-4. And then if they beat Kansas State, okay, well, if they could beat K-State, do they have it in them to pull off one upset against LSU or Tennessee if one of those teams ends up being worse than expected? And if they can do that, now you could talk yourself into maybe like a 9 or a 10 win season. And so you can see how quickly this stuff can start to snowball on itself in a good way. And when you see what happened last year with TCU, again, not connected to Mizzou in any meaningful way, and maybe that was a one-off, but it also makes you wonder, has NIL, has the ability for these teams to go to the transfer portal more than previously, has coaching turnover. Does that allow for maybe some teams to come out of nowhere in a way that they hadn't previously? I'm not calling for a college football playoff appearance, but if TCU can go from terrible program to into the college football playoff, it stands to reason that Mizzou could go from 500 program to winning 8 or 9 games, especially when 4 of their losses or whatever last year were by one score.
I was going to say TCU cashed in every single good luck penny that they had.
100%. But that's what it takes, man. If you're
Astral assistance, it's always my last point on Count the Ifs. You need help, and they got it for sure.
You need health. Like that's a big thing that we just don't take into account a lot. A team like Georgia, right? They can go a season without their best wide receiver, and then he shows up in the national championship game, and they're fine because it's Georgia, and their backup is also a 5-star recruit that is 6'4", 220 pounds, and ran a 4.4 in high school, right? At Mizzou, that doesn't exist. If I'm not even going to say the name, but if one of your like top players goes down early in the season, well, that changes things in a significant way at Mizzou. So you need health. You need some good fortune. You need the ball not to bounce through the end zone when your running back fumbles to potentially beat a team on the road. When you're not having a very good day offensively, you need your running back to not get tripped up at like the 5-yard line against the best defense in the country, and then you to not score on that drive. You need your quarterback to not throw 3 interceptions almost immediately against Florida when 2 of them are on the wide receiver that clearly either didn't run the right route or didn't have the right communication with the quarterback. Like, these are the kinds of things that cannot go against you. You need your quarterback to not tear his labrum in the second game of the season. That would be helpful. That would also be helpful. So if you get some of these things that go in the opposite direction, a little bit of that good karma comes Mizzou's way. That's something that could help you get in the right direction as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Mizzou. You don't get karma. You have to work around it. CM Schaefer 07. What is more likely, 9-3 or 6-6?
I mean, if you're asking me more likely, it's always the latter.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you ask me like what's more likely, 5-7 or 4-8 or 9-3, that's where it gets a little bit more interesting because that would be a disastrous outcome. I think 6-6 is like within the range of outcomes. Yeah, maybe even in the median outcome for the season.
Numbers. I think Bill C's SP Plus has Missouri. Yeah, has them at 6.4 wins. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, 6-6 is way more likely. For this team, though, I mean, yeah, it's going to be 6-6. I mean, since I put the bad juju out in the world, you really think 4-8 is how likely would you consider 4-8 to be something real? Which is what some publications have Missouri at, by the way.
I mean, it feels almost impossible.
I mean,
like, think about how many things would have to go wrong for you to go 4-8.
Every toss-up game goes the wrong way.
Yeah.
You win what? South Dakota, Middle Tennessee,
Vandy, and then pick your other game.
Memphis, I guess, and then you lose literally every single.
I mean, you'd have to. You win one game in the SEC. You just beat Vandy and lose every other game. I see that as a like first percentile outcome. In terms of like being the worst. I cannot imagine Mizzou winning fewer than 5 games this year. I
can't either.
It's hard for me to fathom because when you have a good defense, that's what raises your floor. The defense is the floor. The offense helps your ceiling. If you've got a pretty good defense, and Mizzou does have one, or at least has the ability to have one, we believe it to be good. I don't think you can win fewer than 5 games. No. It's hard for me to fathom that.
If you want to point out ways that this goes wrong, the defense is not as havocy as it was last year because that is not a very consistent stat.
And you lost edge rush.
You lose your edge rusher, right? And like those pressures don't turn into sacks. And Tyron Hopper had a ton of pressures that did not turn into sacks. Maybe that's just who he is, right? Maybe it's just he can't close the deal, and then no one else is there to clean it up. That could happen. The Chris Abrams, Drain, and Ennis Rakestraw combined for 24 passes broken up. That's absurd. I can tell you right now that's not going to happen this year. So what does that mean? Do some of those go over the receiver's head, or do some of those get caught? Interceptions were not as good as you'd like to think when it comes to passes defense versus interceptions caught. Does that not improve? Like You can see a world where this defense regresses in effectiveness because they're not able to hit home and create those havoc plays, which they were, for the most part, able to do last year. The difference in a win and a loss for Missouri's havoc rate, Missouri's average havoc in a win was 35%. In a loss, it was 20. And you had below 20 multiple times, including a 9% at Kansas State and a 12% against Wake Forest. So you can see how this goes poorly. A defense regressing that way is one way to do it. Also, maybe Kirby Moore is not the answer. Maybe there is no good quarterback. Like, you can talk yourself into a bunch, the offensive line falls apart, but like, can they happen? Yes. I can't believe all of those things would happen. And a team that only had a defense and basically nothing on offense last year still won 6 games. So 6-6 is more likely, but I would be shocked and disappointed if that was the outcome.
When you look at the SEC East,
mm-hmm.
specifically this year, we've talked about Vandy. I think some of the teams that are most interesting to me are, I mean, we mentioned Kentucky for all of the million different reasons. They've got Devin Leary this year. I really like Devin Leary. I think he's a good quarterback. And we talked about previously this offseason how we wanted him at Mizzou. I thought that would have been a great pickup for them. I don't know about the rest of the roster. I genuinely don't know yet. I think they've got a great coach, and I believe he's going to get the most out of them.
Their receivers are killer. They have 3 blue chip receivers, including Dane Key, I think is what his name is.
Did they upgrade that O-line, though? Because that was their big issue last year.
O-line was the problem. They brought in a couple transfers, but we don't know how they're going to gel. And offensive line coach is the same. So
I think South Carolina is a program that just we don't talk about. And it's because nobody really knows what to do with what they did last year.
No.
Because the second half of the season, like, they were good. Like,
beat
legitimately
Clemson.
Good.
Yeah.
They beat Tennessee. And Spencer Rattler looks like Oklahoma good version of Spencer Rattler suddenly.
He did, yeah.
And I don't know how much of that is real. Like, I genuinely do not know. But if it was real, they could be pretty good this year. Like, I've got them beating North Carolina this weekend, potentially. And if they do that and we see them get off to a hot start, okay, well, that gets interesting suddenly. I don't know what Joe Milton's going to be for Tennessee. Yeah. I think that offense kind of runs itself, but I have no idea if he's good or not, and that changes their ceiling. And I think Florida's atrocious, man. I think that has the potential to be a train wreck this season. Napier's recruiting like a madman right now, but he's got to make it through the season.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got a tough schedule potentially this year with Utah, Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, and Florida State on it. If you lose those games and you lose any toss-ups whatsoever, he could be fired by the end of the season. I mean, we could be talking about Mizzou versus Florida with an interim coach filling out the final 2 weeks of that year.
Has always gone well.
Raced by LSU.
That has always gone well. I love that.
So, how do you feel about the SEC East, the sphere within which Missouri plays this year?
I think South Carolina is always a little too chesty, and I get it, but they haven't really done anything. I know Spurrier had a couple of 10-win seasons, but like that was cool. But I think Shane Beamer is a good coach, but you shouldn't lose to Missouri last year, 23-10. You shouldn't lose to that Florida team 38-6. I'm sorry, what? You lost to Arkansas?
Was that a good Anthony Richardson game? Because I feel like that was a good Anthony Richardson game.
Were any of them good? I don't even know. That guy.
I love Anthony Richardson.
I hope he does well with the Colts. I hope he makes a ton of money. And then, of course, they go out and beat Tennessee and Clemson. And then what do? They lose to a really mediocre Notre Dame team.
Yeah.
I think it all goes off of Spencer Rattler. And like, is he going to be good Spencer or bad Spencer? And their offensive coordinator stinks. I'm sorry. I feel really confident in saying that he did not put out a single good NFL offense, and he has never coached at the collegiate level before. You cannot tell me he's going to be any good. It's just not. So then it's on the defense. And that defense last year was fine. It was 56th, but you also lose a lot. So everybody always seems really eager to like South Carolina. I don't see it. Kentucky is going to be good. No doubt about it. You got to beat Kentucky to even think about challenging Georgia. Or in Tennessee. So that's where I'm at there. Here's the thing with Florida. Graham Mertz is bad.
Terrible.
I don't care if Paul Chris goes out on sports radio and says, well, I misused him. Paul, it's not your offense. Your offense works despite the quarterback. I'm sorry. And they really are Wisconsin South. They have two really good running backs. Their offensive line's pretty decent. And then everything else is, I don't know. So they're 2021 Missouri, basically. I don't think they're going to be any good. And I do think it's going to be a train wreck. And good luck, Billy. Outside of that, though, I mean, Tennessee, here's the thing about Joe Milton. That's the most inaccurate dude. He's the most inaccurate guy. But not Bud Elliott. Yeah, Bud Elliott from 247. He's the guy who does all these high school recruiting things. And he pulled out his notebook for Joe Milton, which was, 6 years ago at this point. And he goes, like his notes were, if this guy gets picked, he's going to tank whatever offense he's in because he can't hit anything. Like they were doing 7-on-7 versus air, and he just like overthrow or hit him in the back, or like his timing was all off. He can throw a country mile, but he can't get the timing on 1, 2, 3. Like, I don't know. Josh Heupel has done great with quarterbacks, and I'm sure he's got the ability to make Joe Milton good. But until I see it, it doesn't matter how prolific your receivers are if you can't get them the ball. And then, of course, Georgia. I've already gone over that. So, I mean, unless Vandy really gets it together in the next couple weeks, and that wasn't a fluke, which it could be. I mean, I see Missouri comfortably as the third best team if you beat Kentucky, or the fourth best team if you lose to them.
Yeah. I remember how the SEC East looked in like 13 and 14 specifically. And it felt open, it felt like at least in the middle. I mean, Georgia is always at the top. Really? But it felt open, and you could see how they could find their lane. And that's kind of how I feel about it this year, where if things go Missouri's way, you're not winning it. You're not. But if Milton's bad and just doesn't become the player that we thought he was going to be, or that people believed him to be because the offense creates stars at that position, could Missouri finish second in the East? I mean, is that conceivable to you?
I mean, here's the other thing. It's not just who Missouri beats, but who does everybody else lose to?
Sure.
And I
mean, if Milton's bad, it opens up a lot of potential outcomes for them.
Yeah, Georgia's schedule is cake, but I gotta think they're going to screw something up somewhere down the line. Tennessee, I think, could lose again to South Carolina. South Carolina is going to lose 2 or 3 games. They're always good for it. If Kentucky doesn't click,
and they draw Alabama and Texas A&M from the West.
Okay, I feel like if it's not Tennessee 2, it's going to be Kentucky 2, because that seems like the most complete team, even with the lack of returning production. But yeah, it feels like Kentucky's always good for a loss or 2.
Who's Tennessee have from the West this year? Have you checked?
I could tell you in less than 10 seconds.
Oh, they've got Bama and Mississippi State.
Yep. So they got Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, Vandy, Florida, Georgia, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi State, Alabama, all in 3. Mississippi State, Alabama, South Carolina, Louisville. That's how they close it out.
And they've got at Mississippi State, at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm. And at Georgia, and at Vanderbilt. So
you could see some slip-ups there.
You could. Not against Akron, but,
No, but I'm talking SEC, like how you get into the divisional race.
Yeah.
I think if you want to dream on Mizzou, your dream is they get to 9-3 and finish second in the East. Yeah. That's your dream.
Tennessee's got to go to UConn. There's a loss. Sorry, Vols. Yeah, it's about who the opponents lose. And I think Georgia's going to lose in the regular season this year. Don't ask me who. It's so hard to repeat. Why not Mizzou? Why not?
If that was at Mizzou, that would be a lot more interesting. But
hey, the only time they beat Georgia was in Athens.
So. Hey, and Eli Drinkwitz is unafraid to pull out a trick play when necessary.
At least one flea flicker. Not any more than that, and not any other play. But one flea flicker. Gotta go back to Colt 45. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's the secret sauce. So yeah, feeling bullish about Missouri. It's about who everybody else loses to, but that's okay. So we get back to this week's game, South Dakota.
I'll let you take care of this one, buddy. You know the names of players on this team, so I don't think Vegas even put out a line on this one.
Not against FCS teams now. If Missouri loses this one, you have permission to burn it all down.
Yeah.
They did get a new offensive coordinator.
Eat this piece of paper in front of me if they lose this game. They're not
on YouTube Live. That's what we're going to do. I will eat something. I don't know. They did get a new offensive coordinator from South Dakota State. He was their receivers coach, and South Dakota State's a really good offense. But every kid that was recruited to South Dakota, it was recruited to run the smashy smash, power eye, run it 5 times. And now they're kind of reverting to spread it out, throw it around, and they literally lost every single receiver except for one from last year's team. So I feel pretty good about this offense stinking out loud, especially with Ennis Rakestraw and Chris Abrams-Drain manning the corner spots. And God, you can even put me and Kat out there, and I feel pretty good about our chances. It's a bunch of dudes who are not ranked. Last year when Missouri played Abilene Christian, they had ACU anyway had a lot of Power 5, G5, D1 transfers coming down. Like not a lot, and they weren't 4 stars, but they had them scattered around their roster. I don't see that South Dakota brought any transfers in, and none of these dudes that they're projected to start were thought of coming out of high school at all, which doesn't mean how you play now. But if you're doing a system shift with a new offense, you're missing all your receivers. You don't have any blue chip or talented guys coming out of high school. You're coming to Mizzou on a Thursday night to open up a season where there's a lot of promise. If you don't call off the dogs, name your score.
If you could have an ideal scenario for like 3 things that happen in this game that would make you more optimistic about Mizzou the rest of the way, what does that look like? And 3 is an arbitrary number. Maybe it's 1, maybe it's 25, but just for the sake of time, maybe. What are some of the things that you would like to see that make you more optimistic, taking into account, obviously, the opponent that we're going to see? Because learning about the quarterback position in this game is going to be difficult.
So I want a receiver to catch a pass more than 25 yards down the field.
Okay.
Like in the air for 25
yards.
Weiss,
baby. That's got his name written all over it.
Yeah. Him or Dennis Jackson or Mookie. I don't care who it is. I don't care who the receiver is. I don't care who the quarterback is. And I do not care who the opponent is. I want to see a call where the ball is in the air for 25 yards and it lands comfortably in the receiver's hands. I want to see that. That would be number 1. The second thing that I want to see that make me feel really good is no sacks given up. And I understand that quarterbacks can run into sacks sometimes, especially Brady Cook, who likes to move around a little bit. Don't care. I want to see goose egg on the sacks. The other thing I want to see, a running back take it for 30. I mean, we saw it last year, but I just want to see that it's possible. They run that, power to the right, which is Eli's favorite play. And I want to see it work.
Can I label who I specifically want it to be?
Is it Jamal?
It's either Jamal or Tavoris Jones. If one of those 2 guys ends up having that explosive, I think that speaks well to what the running game could be like in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
Because I don't think those guys are getting significant action early on, but as they continue to get more reps, if they earn that trust, that's how they could end up seeing the field more often.
Yeah, for sure. Got to pass block and you got to hit your hole.
Yep.
I'd be good with that. And I don't need to see anything from this defense. Maybe like a defensive end gets a pressure or a sack or something like that would be cool. But I don't need to see that. Just the pressure from Blake's defense comes from everywhere. So, I don't need to see a lot other than what I listed. Do you need to see anything to feel really good?
No mistakes by the quarterbacks would be ideal. Like, don't throw a pick. Make smart decisions, that kind of stuff. But even if they do, it's not going to be the end of the world because of the opponent, and you can learn from it with these kinds of games. I think one guy not named Luther Burden having a really big game would be great. If you could just find somebody that goes out there and looks great and just gives you confidence as a Mizzou fan, like, okay, they've got somebody else that they can lean on. Like, whoever that ends up being, whether that's Late in the game, Joshua Manning goes out there. You're like, hey, this guy is better than anybody expected him to be. Mekhi Miller goes out there and it's like, hey, he took a real step forward and this guy looks like a significant player for them. I don't care the name, honestly, but somebody go out there and have a really nice game. And then kind of secondarily to that, if you can get a tight end that catches a pass,
yeah,
specifically in the red zone, and if you could get a tight end to score a touchdown in this game, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty cool. Your tight ends had 2 combined touchdowns last year.
Oh, I know. They were targeted like 8 times. If we had to assume, you had to bet on which tight end was going to catch that pass, and your options were Tyler Stevens, Brett Norfleet, I guess Jordan Harris.
Yeah. Wisner. I would probably go Norfleet. I think they're going to try to find out what Norfleet can do against against a college team early to find out where he's at in his progression. Because I think Mizzou wants him to play a lot.
Yes.
And it just comes down to whether or not he's capable. But I think Norfleet's the guy that they're going to want to get a bunch of reps. They honestly, like if I was in charge, there would be a lot of stuff that would go horribly wrong with the college football team.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't play Tyler Stevens in this game. Just wouldn't play him. You know what you have in Tyler Stevens. There's nothing that you can learn by putting Tyler Stevens out there. And you have like 75 freshmen or redshirt freshman tight ends that you seemingly like. Give them every rep in this game. And give them every rep again next week, honestly. Give Tyler Stevens like the first drive and treat it like a preseason game in the NFL. Get him out of there. And then let's see what the young guys can do. It's not going to ruin your offense. You're going to be fine. Like nothing meaningfully will change for you. Tyler Stevens wasn't going to do much anyways. Let's be honest here, guys. Yeah. The upside's there. The downside is maybe they miss a block or something. And if that's going to happen, you'd rather it happen against South Dakota or Middle Tennessee State. So I would like to see a lot of the young guys filtering in at tight end this week.
Yeah.
So who would be your answer on that?
Jared Kugler, ZOU. Thanks for joining in. I would say Brett Norfleet because I love our beautiful blue chippers and I want to see them do well. And he isn't listed as like the second guy on the tight end depth chart. So I am with you. I think that I don't care. The best one, like show me the best pass catching tight end that we have and get him involved. And I don't think that's Tyler Stevens. I'm with you. I know he caught that cool touchdown pass against Georgia. He is a placeholder. He was someone who brought in for experience and because he was tall. I know that the Eli Drinkwitz offense can use tight ends creatively and effectively. And it just seems like he doesn't have the guys to do that. So maybe it is Max. Maybe I love the horse. I hope he maybe gets a shot, but I think it's going to be Brett Norfleet because he is an attractive option. He is very tall and he's already so far worked his way into the rotation with the one. So that would be my choice as well. Yeah.
You want to go through a few superlatives real quick before the season begins?
Let me hear it.
Biggest surprise breakout candidate for Mizzou this year is who?
Okay, well, surprise meaning that we didn't expect anything.
Yeah. Tyrone Hopper is ineligible for this award. Luther Burden is also ineligible for this award. Who's the guy that's going to surprise people that he ends up being a really significant contributor for them?
So I'm also just going to rule out anybody that really has been talked up by Drinkwitz because I kind of feel like that's cheating too. Can I say Dennis Jackson?
Yeah, I like that.
Because he was brought on for a very specific type of receiver. He's speed, and he just has not seen the field. Like it was really tough for him to get on at Ole Miss. And I feel like the coaches saw something and wanted to bring him on for that. And even if it's just, spelling Luther in the slot or, going out wide for 9 routes or whatever, I feel like he's got the athleticism to make an impact and just no one's talking about him. So based off of those parameters, I want to go Dennis Jackson. What about you?
I like that one a lot, honestly. He's somebody that I considered for this as well. If I was going to go with one guy, though, that ends up surprising people and is a better contributor than expected, Connor Tollison.
Ooh, yay.
Connor Tollison.
Yay, Connor.
I am really hopeful that guy ends up clicking this year.
Mm-hmm.
I saw earlier today, Eli Drinkwitz was doing his availability, his weekly, let's go to a bar, sit down and talk.
Yeah.
And he said, quote, Connor Tollison looks like a new player for us. He looks like he loves football again.
Wow.
I think sometimes what happens for guys when they get into a situation where they're clearly overwhelmed is it becomes mentally as problematic as it is physically. And Nate, I'm sure there's been something in your life that has been this way. I've had this before where like I've taken a class in college and I just got so underwater that I just shut down mentally and physically. And it's just like, I can't do it. Like I'm not, there's no way for me to get out of this hole that I have dug for myself. And I am just going to continue to bury myself until this is all over. And it sends you just into like almost like a spiraling depression, if you will. I don't know Connor Tollison. I've never met the gentleman. I have no idea if that's the case. But just looking from the outside, I could see how that kind of a thing would happen with the way that he was playing last year, where he probably knew as well as we did, man. He sees it. He's watching the film. I am just not ready for this. Mm-hmm. Physically, mentally, I am overwhelmed. There's so much that's happening around me. There's so much that I have to learn. There is so much strength that I need to gain. And there's just nothing that he can do. Because every week they kept throwing him out there because they didn't have another option. He was their best option at the spot, even though he was a bad option. Mm-hmm. So if he has truly taken a step forward this year, that'd be huge for them. Because then the biggest question mark on the offensive line could become a strength.
Hey, absolutely.
That's ideal. So
yeah.
He'd be somebody that I would throw into there.
Jeff Flores wants to know what Sam Horn needs to do to start.
Let's take this as like, what do we need to see in the first 2 games for him to win the job?
Pretty much, yeah.
Because that's basically what this is.
Yeah. I want to ask, is there anything he can show? Because it kind of feels like Brady Cook's got this thing on lockdown, but I don't know.
Yes, there has to be. Otherwise, they're not doing this. So, because we know Eli loves having his quarterback locked in. Yeah. Loves it. He loves nothing more than to be able to say, like, this is our guy. Last year, he did it like day 2 of camp with Brady. Yep. Previously, there was no question. Bazelak is our guy, even though his knee is not working. His body is shutting down. He's throwing picks left and right. He has 0 explosive plays. Like, we are sticking with this guy, right? So if he was genuinely sticking by Brady no matter what, I think we would already know that. So what do we need to see in order for that not to be the case? I think it's twofold. I think one, he needs to be really smart with the football. Because I think one of Eli's biggest fears is he throws him out there and he loses games for Mizzou. Because it is as much about not losing games at the quarterback position for Eli Drinkwitz as it is going out there and winning games. Because this is a good defense. You should have a solid running game. You've got weapons that can get yards after the catch. And if you play some complementary football, you can win 7 games on this season. And man, what is the most important part about being a college football coach? What's the most important job? Keeping the job. Yeah. And if you have Brady Cook out there, you're pretty sure you're keeping your job. If you throw Sam Horn, you don't know. You could lose some games that you're not supposed to lose. You could lose to Vandy. You could lose to Memphis. And then suddenly you're looking at it like, whoa, that 5-win threshold, it's there. So what do we need to see? Be smart with the football. Make some plays with your legs, because that's something that you get with Brady that you want to see that you can also get if Sam Horn's out there. And I think he's capable of that. And then create explosives, man. Go out there and let it rip a little bit. And if you can do those things and Brady maybe takes a step back and looks underwhelming, that's probably how it happens. What do you think?
I mean, I understand that this is an open competition, and I understand that they've whittled it down to Sam and Brady, which is good. I think that's a good thing. I think this staff wants to see a reason to shut it down and say, yep, Brady's our guy. I'm not saying they're not going to give Sam a fair shake. I'm not saying they're not going to be objective in how they analyze this, but I do think no matter what they say, there's going to be a bias towards the guy who played all last year. So it would have to be, a lot of accuracy, good command of the field, no mistakes, escapes, mobile in the pocket, escapes a few sacks, maybe makes a couple of good checks at the line, super accurate. Like, it has to be a noticeable upgrade. Noticeable. And, Brady Cook was running for 6.2 yards per pop when you take out the sacks last year. And I know Sam ran for 11, but that was only on one run. Sam's got the athleticism. He can do it, but and I know they want Sam to be good, but oh my God, I just feel like they want Brady to be their guy. So it would have to be just a tremendous performance. And then he'd have to probably do it for 2 straight games. Because if Sam does really well against South Dakota, then they're probably going to extend this experiment into Middle Tennessee, a game which you can lose if you have a terrible quarterback out there or one who's not prepared. So yeah, I'd say you have to be pretty dang perfect, Jeff. And maybe he does, and that'd be great. But yeah, I don't know. Tough to tell. What other superlatives do you have for me?
Let's see here. What is the thing that you are most concerned about this year?
I won't say quarterback. So I'm going to say.
Can I go first? Edge rusher. It's not like I think they're going to get pressure because of what you've said. Blake Baker gets pressure. The guy will manufacture it if that's what he's got to do. But the problem is when you have to manufacture pressure every time and you can never get home with your front four, now you're leaving yourself exposed potentially on the back end. And what we think is a strength right now with the secondary, if you're having to use those guys to blitz, like if you're seeing Dalen Carnell coming more often, if you're having your nickel corner coming more often, if you're having Tyron Hopper coming more often, now you leave the back end a little bit exposed and big plays happen against you. And now people start pointing their fingers towards the secondary when really that's an issue that was caused by your lack of edge rushers. So that is one thing that we've talked about it a lot, but it is something that I am definitely keeping an eye on early in the season.
Yeah. I mean, it's quarterback, edge rusher, or offensive line. And so I'm going to say offensive line, where you get a lot of feeling good about stuff coming out. You have a good game against South Dakota. You have a good game against Middle Tennessee. And then whap, you run into a brick wall called Kansas State. And like, oh, nothing actually improved. That is my terror. That is how this season comes undone. This is how everything goes. Oh, we actually didn't make any improvements. So that's probably my biggest fear. Not to pick on anybody, but like everybody in that group, there's a way that you can question them. Even if you like them or they're their best, there's a way that you can question them. And if all those questions come home to roost, that's a concern.
All right, last one I've got for you.
Yeah.
Most likely upset that Mizzou pulls off. Most likely game that we're writing in as a win that will end up being a loss.
Most likely upset, Tennessee at home late in the season.
Okay.
Maybe Joe Milton stinks. Most likely loss that we are over, or most likely game to lose that we are penciling in as a win. I want to say it. It's Vanderbilt. It's on the road. You will have, potentially 4-0. You might be overlooking him because you got LSU at home the next thing. Like, oh yeah, we got this, man. It's just Vanderbilt. And you show up at the construction site and they just surprise you with like 3 big explosive plays and the offense doesn't click and the defense on Vanderbilt's like becomes alive and you lose another like 17-14 or 20-17, something like that. Like that's the one that scares me the most until proven otherwise. What about you?
I'll say the most likely upset's K-State.
Okay.
I don't even know if I believe that, but I want it to be.
What, that they can upset them or that it would be considered an upset?
Oh, that they can upset them.
Okay.
Because if they do, I think it sets up everything else. That is the game, man. Yeah. Every year we have one of these that we point to early in the season, where you say to yourself, like, man, if they can just get that one, suddenly you can dream. And this year that game is Kansas State. A couple of years ago, it was that Kentucky game early in the season where they just lost in heartbreaking fashion. 2019, I thought it was going to be a couple of games, but we never got there because of Wyoming. So you have these a lot where Purdue has been that game for them back in 2018, something like that.
That 2017 Purdue game is still
brutal.
One of the worst games I've ever seen.
So you every year they've got one of those, and it can set you up in one direction or the other. It can get you excited. It can make you feel like your season's over before it ever really even gets in motion. And that's the game for Mizzou this year. So I'll say that's the one that I want to be an upset as much as I believe it will be.
Okay, good.
The game that we're writing in as a win right now that I think has the most potential to be a loss. One game that I'm more nervous about than most, I think, is Memphis. Not because I think Memphis is good, but they're playing that game at the Dome, and nothing good happens at the Dome.
The Rams Rams won a Super Bowl. Missouri's beaten Illinois 5-6 years in a row at the Dome. Come on, it's a good place.
Bad things happen at that place. It is a bad field. It is a bad environment. It is not a good place to play. I'm glad they're coming here to my native St. Louis, but
20-minute drive.
That one makes me a little nervous. The problem is, like, I don't know what are the other games that people are writing in as wins right now. You know, like Vandy, yes, but I think they're going to win that one. I think South Dakota, Middle Tennessee, I'm comfortable with. Vandy, I'm comfortable with. Are people writing South Carolina as a win right now?
Yeah, I think they are.
Then that's the one.
The win streak, right? So, yeah, that's another good one. Yeah. Although, I mean, they really do not like each other. Even the players on those teams do not like. Missouri does not like South Carolina and vice versa. So, like, I feel like to be prepared at least. I don't know if that means you win, but CM Schaefer, how does Kentucky punch Mizzou in the gut this year? We all know it's inevitable. Thank you for saying you're basically playing my role here. Well, we've seen Mizzou lose by a Kentucky player kicking the ball out of a player's hand and the referee not stopping the clock. Yeah. We've seen Kentucky win by pushing off in the end zone and catching a touchdown pass when it was clearly offensive pass interference. We've seen Kentucky win by, I mean, it was not going to be in the bag, but the rule, the Will Norris rule, right, where he tackled a punter who was clearly way out of any potential of kicking the ball and broke him in half, and now there's a rule to protect that. So I don't know, man. Maybe the hole opens up and Bain like explodes the stadium and there's a hole in the ground and everybody goes in and dies and Kentucky's the only team left, and so it's a forfeit. I don't know. What do you think, BK?
It's got to be worse. Like, they find the most brutal ways to lose those games. Like,
Missouri gets 28-3.
I could see something like that. Yeah, that makes sense. Like Devin Leary. Yep. Devin Leary. They pull a South Carolina from 2013.
Oh, geez.
Something like that, where they end up coming back from an insurmountable lead. Mizzou was up 17-0 in that one before Connor Shaw happened. Something like that would be good. I feel like a blocked punt with like 2 minutes to go. Mizzou's trying to pin him deep. Like, I'm trying to think like Eli Drinkwitz. What would he do? You're at like the 50, 4th and 3. They decide to punt instead of they're up by 4 and they decide to punt to pin them deep because they trust their defense. They've been making some plays like 21-17. And instead of pinning them deep, it's a blocked punt, and they end up scoring like 3 plays later to win the game. Yeah, something like that. That feels.
I'm already sick to my stomach. That's
Mizzou.
Yeah. Well, they'll find a way. They always do. So
your final predictions 8-4 for the season?
I'm going to say 8-4. It's crazy, but I'm going to say it. What do you say?
I've got 7-5. That's what I've been saying all along. I want to see that K-State game, man. I want to see that K-State game.
I know. And guess what? Here's the great thing about this schedule. Missouri gets two.
No. Get the hell out of here, man. There's nothing great about this schedule.
They have two opportunities to figure out what they have, both at quarterback, at tight end, and offensive line. Does all this stuff work? Does it all work? And they got 2 weeks to figure that out.
Wasn't that what fall camp was supposed to be for?
No, this is college. It's the games, baby. That's what it's for. Okay, you get live fire, you figure out what you got, and then you are prepared for Kansas State. That is what
you know. What else? You know what else happens in those first couple of weeks of the season? K-State figures out what they've got too. They also figure it out.
Yeah, but
against SEMO and Troy. Team. On the plus side, they might lose to Troy. We know that's a
Troy is a good
matchup
team,
made in hell.
Troy is a good team, man. I don't.
Bad scheduling right there. That's worse scheduling than Mizzou's.
Yeah. Troy might K-State is what they're going to do. That's going to be great. I'm excited. I know you don't think it's real football, but the season's here at least. So you can watch real games if you want to, but I'm going to enjoy Mizzou while it's here. BK, your final thought before we get the heck out of here.
My final thought is that I'm excited to watch Mizzou football this year in a way that I haven't been in a while. Last year was up and down. There were moments where it was exciting, but man, after that K-State game, it was really hard to get overly excited about Mizzou. I'm just going to be totally frank with everybody. And we kind of played out the string and we figured it out. In 2021, after that Boston College game, man, it was real tough to get super excited about what Mizzou football was. And so my hope is we get a month into this season and we're still excited because right now I have genuine optimism about this team. You got a defensive coordinator that's proven to be good at his job. You've got defensive talent that has proven to be good on the football field. You have a wide receiver in Luther Burden that I'm legitimately excited to watch on Thursday night now that he's playing his natural position in the slot. I think they may have fixed some things on the offensive line. I think there's a chance that they could be pretty good at the quarterback position. Not great, but pretty good at the quarterback position. And I like that they have a new play caller. So you combine all of that, my optimism is rising for the success level of Mizzou football. And if they can get 3 weeks into the schedule and I can maintain that level of optimism for Mizzou football, oh boy, it's going to be a fun year. Nate Edwards, it's going to be a fun season.
I can't wait. And that's the show for today. As always, we appreciate the downloads and the subscriptions. You can leave a comment. You can rate us. We love all types of feedback from you all. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Nate G. Edwards. He's at BK Sports Talk. Of course, you can follow the Rock M flagship at Rock M Nation and podcasting outlet at Rock M Radio. We appreciate you tuning in this time. We'll try to do better next time. And until then, MIZ.
ZOU.